If I'm honest, right now, your darkness is deciding whether you'll live your own life or stay trapped in someone else's script. Stay until the end. One raw truth can shatter the walls that have been silently stealing your years. You wake up already tired, the kind of tired that sticks to your bones even after a hot shower and a mug of strong coffee. You scroll through another article on growth, let another podcast play in the background, nod at another therapy clip cut for social media. The words sound reasonable, the voices are calm, yet underneath every tip and trick you feel the same hollow echo. It is as if someone keeps promising water while your throat stays dry. You sense the wall that nothing seems to cross. Deep down, you know the wall is not outside. It is not your partner, not your co-workers, not the economy. Something inside you holds the gate shut. Admitting this feels like stepping toward a cliff at night. Because hearing the real truth means the self you carefully constructed will have to crumble, and the person who walks out afterward may not fit the life you built to survive. That thought terrifies the nervous system more than any crisis on the news. Changing books is easy. Changing identity feels like dying. So you protect yourself. You binge content and call it learning. You chase fresh routines and call it growth. None of that makes you lazy or stupid or hopeless. It makes you human. Your mind was designed to keep you breathing, not to keep you free. Every cell in your body learned to flinch away from the memory of pain, and truth often enters dressed like pain. No one warned you how violent it can feel when a single honest sentence crashes against a belief that has kept you safe since childhood. Right now, your defenses whisper that you should click away, that these words will sting. That voice means the gate is real. Yet somewhere beneath the concrete, a softer pulse knocks, aching for what lives on the other side. It is faint because you taught yourself to ignore it, but it never left. The moment you finally listen will hurt, yes, and that hurt will prove you are still alive. By the end of this story, you will understand that your deafness has never been failure, only the most loyal guard your psyche could hire. And once you see the guard for what it is, you can choose whether to keep paying the price for protection or to step through the opening and meet the night air. If you can bear that first breath, everything begins. If I am honest, the cult of constant positivity has become a well-lit prison. You were told to repeat bright affirmations until the darkness inside you lost its grip. You forced a grin in the mirror. You counted daily blessings. You wrote gratitude lists that read like receipts from a store you never visited. Each list ended with the same dull throb, the shame that nothing changed. A painted smile over raw skin stings, and every time the paint cracks, you blame yourself for not smiling hard enough. Most psychologists will not tell you that forced light can scald the soul deeper than night ever could. The shame grows heavier than the pain it was meant to hide. This sounds harsh, but fake sunshine rots faster than any shadow. Then came the avalanche of books and podcasts promising hacks, blueprints, 12-step miracles. You devoured page after page the way a starving body devours empty calories. The intellect felt fed, yet the gut kept twisting. Text and talk glide off the surface when the inner gate is sealed. Words bounce, they do not pierce. You underline paragraphs, you quote clever sentences to friends. Still, the secret place inside stays untouched. The mind nods, the bones remain mute. It is not your fault. The wall you built for safety is built of lived emergencies, not laziness. A sentence alone cannot topple concrete poured by survival. Therapy entered the stage next, carrying a clipboard and warm tea. Therapy can heal when used as fire, not as lullaby. Too many sessions cater to comfort, trading temporary relief for deeper rupture. You sit, you hear you are good enough, you feel a wash of calm, and you leave with the same blind spot that drove you to the chair. If the room protects you from every jagged truth, it becomes another padded cell. You pay to stay asleep while believing you woke. Most therapists will not admit that their gentleness sometimes fattens the very defense you came to dissolve. Again, not your failure. You followed the map exactly as drawn. The map simply feared the mountains. You did everything right according to instruction. You thought happy thoughts, absorbed expert wisdom, attended carefully licensed sessions. The methods shine on paper. The issue hides in what you refuse to hear when the words cut too close. No technique can replace the raw act of admission. The psyche clings to familiar misery because misery known feels safer than freedom unimagined. That clinging deafens you more thoroughly than any external noise. If this still feels like a personal indictment, pause. Feel the pulse in your throat. That pulse keeps you alive by fighting threats long before the mind labels them. An uncomfortable insight registers as threat. The body locks the doors. Positivity slogans, productivity manuals, soothing sessions become elegant furniture inside a locked mansion. Beautiful, useless, silent. The door remains barred not by lack of knowledge, but by a single decision never to touch the handle. I will not sell you sharper tools or brighter words. I invite you to notice the exact moment your shoulders tense, your breath shortens, your eyes glaze. That is the guard dog barking. In that instant, the old self braces for impact. Let the bark echo. Let the muscles quiver. Stay still. Truth hovers at the edge of that tremor. Hear it, and something in you will break. Let it break. Pieces create openings, and openings let meaning pass. Not everyone is ready to hear this. Many will close the tab and chase the next pleasant headline. You are still here. That means the crack in the wall already exists. The rest of this story will press on it, gently, relentlessly, until light or darkness floods through. Either way, the air will finally move. Pause with me. If these words resonate, subscribe to the channel. That way more people can finally hear the truth that's been hidden from them. Your click is not applause. It is a flare in the dark, telling the algorithm there is value here, keeping the door ajar for anyone still locked behind their own walls and searching for something real. You sit in a quiet room, headphones off, nothing to distract from the hum inside your skull. The silence grows thick until a single memory rises, something someone said a long time ago that still tastes like salt on an open wound. The mind recoils. A reflex faster than thought slams the door, and the sentence fades. That reflex is not a moral failure. It is biology. Long before you spoke the first word, your nervous system learned that pain equals danger. A harsh phrase, a challenging fact, any spark that might burn the story of who you believe you are registers like the hiss of a predator in tall grass. Survival instincts do not care about enlightenment. They only care about keeping the heart beating, so the inner ear grows selective, hearing comfort, muting threat. Imagine the psyche as an old fortress on a cliff. The ego stands watch at the gate. Ego is not a villain twirling a mustache. Ego is the soldier who survived every siege so far. It catalogs insults, labels friends and foes, patrols the walls at night. Tell that soldier, you are wrong, and steel scrapes stone. The drawbridge lifts, not because the soldier hates truth, but because every correction feels like a blade aimed at its chest. Ego fears the death of its own map more than the pain of living lost. Inside the fortress live stories you call identity. The good child, the provider, the rebel, the caretaker. Each story earned its room by solving an early crisis. When someone speaks a truth that threatens a story's lease, the ego sounds the alarm. Alarms flood the body with stress chemicals, muscles tighten, breath shallows. In this state, nothing subtle penetrates. Words ricochet off the ramparts and fall harmless to the ground. That is why a friend's blunt observation lands like noise. The meaning cannot soak in while adrenaline thunders through veins. Over years, this reaction becomes architecture. You do not just defend against single phrases, you build thick walls of routine explanations. A partner's complaint slots neatly into the "they never appreciate me" file. A colleague's pushback drops into "they are power hungry." The filing system feels objective, yet it is welded from past hurts. Each label allows you to stay distant, to avoid the sting of examining your part. You hear syllables, not sense. Blame is a lighter shield than ownership. It weighs less in the short term, point outward, and energy surges. Indignation feels righteous, almost warm. Turn inward and the heat of shame can sear. Shame tells the nervous system it might be cast out of the tribe. Exile once meant death, so the body treats shame like poison. Better to call the speaker toxic than to sip that venom. The logic is primitive, brutal, efficient. Neuroscience maps these moves with cold precision. A challenging remark ignites the amygdala, the brain's threat radar. Signals race to the hypothalamus. Cortisol spills, heart rate quickens. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, seat of nuanced reasoning, dims. The very circuitry needed to process complex feedback shuts down during perceived attack. The gatekeeper wins before a single rational thought takes the field. Yet there is a deeper layer. The unconscious, as Jung described, is not just a basement. It is an entire landscape buried under daily awareness. Complexes, clusters of charged memories, lie coiled like tripwires. When a word brushes a tripwire, energy erupts. You think you are reacting to the present, but an older wound bleeds. That explosion of feeling convinces you the speaker is at fault. In truth, the speaker merely lit a fuse already wired. Take the example of criticism. If childhood taught you that mistakes equal loss of love, any critique slices like abandonment. One sentence from a boss can echo the voice of a parent, and suddenly your career hangs on the same thread your childhood did. The panic feels contemporary, yet its root lives decades back. Listening under such force is nearly impossible until the old terror is named and soothed. The shadow adds another twist. Everything you exile from self-image, pettiness, envy, need, does not vanish. It gathers in the dark. When someone mirrors that trait back to you, the disowned part flares. The ego cannot admit kinship with the shadow, so it projects. You label the other inferior, dangerous, shallow. Projection is hearing turned outward. Instead of receiving, you broadcast. No bandwidth remains for the incoming message. These mechanisms are not mistakes in design. They are features of evolution. A mind that ignored threat died out. A tribe that tolerated too much dissent fractured. We inherit a psyche tuned for quick defense, not slow growth. Modern life rarely offers predators with claws, yet words can wound the construct that once ensured belonging. The biology has not caught up with the calendar. Now the loop tightens. The more pain truth might cause, the thicker the wall. The thicker the wall, the fewer truths get in, and the more life drifts. You wake years later wearing habits that feel like another person's clothes. The cost of safety becomes living someone else's script. This is the part few dare voice. Staying deaf costs more than listening ever will. Missing truth drains vitality quietly, drip by drip, until emptiness weighs as heavy as trauma. I promised a darker revelation. Here it is. Each ignored message still lands somewhere. It sinks into the body, into tension held in shoulders, into migraines, into restless nights. The fortress keeps the mind pristine, yet turns the flesh into battlefield. Somatic practitioners know this intimately. Unspoken grief lodges in the gut, swallowed anger burns the throat, unacknowledged fear tightens the chest. Silence of the psyche becomes noise of the nerves. You can flee words. You cannot outrun your own skin. There is more at stake. Every unheard truth becomes a ghost in relationships. Partners repeat the same argument. Friends tiptoe around the same topic. Teams waste months circling the obvious flaw in a plan. Deafness multiplies into culture. A family, a company, even a nation can manifest collective walls. The longer the truth stays outside, the more brutal its eventual entrance. Revolutions, divorces, burnouts often begin as whispers we refuse to heed. Pause. Notice any clench in your jaw, any urge to skim ahead. That is the guard dog barking again. You do not need to shut it up. Just watch it, the way a parent watches a scared child at night. Offer presence, not reprimand. The dog barks because it remembers danger. Your job is to teach it the difference between memory and now. How, then, to lower the drawbridge without letting chaos storm the castle? The practice starts not with demolishing defenses, but with recognizing their service. You thank the wall for keeping you alive. Gratitude softens rigid stone. Next, you choose a single moment each day to invite friction. Maybe a colleague's critique, a partner's sigh, a stranger's comment online. Instead of rebuttal, breathe. Count heartbeats. Feel the mind scramble for excuses and let them pass like birds across sky. This is not submission, this is reconnaissance. Over weeks, tolerance grows. The amygdala still sparks, yet the prefrontal cortex no longer blacks out. A sliver of analysis stays online. In that sliver, you ask, not aloud, remember no questions, but as an inner statement. There is data here I do not yet see. The phrasing matters. It asserts existence of information without demanding immediate agreement. Curiosity slides under the door where acceptance could not fit. Eventually, a pattern appears. Certain feedback repeats. A friend, a sibling, a mentor, all reflect the same blind spot. You catalog evidence as though studying wildlife tracks. Emotion still stings, yet evidence piles too high to ignore. When the insight finally lands, it may knock you breathless. Tears, rage, shame surge. That is the old self cracking. You survive. On the other side waits a wider field of choice. From here, the fortress becomes a monastery. Walls still stand. They simply house consciousness rather than shield it. The ego keeps watch, but now it consults shadow instead of exiling it. Complexes still hum, yet they no longer hijack the steering wheel. The gate opens on hinges that squeak, yes, yet swing. Remember, none of this demands perfection. Perfection is another defense, a glittering ideal that shames every stumble. Listening is a muscle. It grows through micro tears and rest. Some days you will revert, lash out, shut down. Those days are not failures. They are proof the work continues. And the darker truth I warned about, the one worse than any painful admission, defines the stakes. To remain deaf is to live a life drafted by fear, edited by shame, published under someone else's name. Decades slip by in that silent compromise. You may avoid the agony of reinvention, yet you inherit the chronic dullness of half-presence. That dullness breeds quiet despair, the kind caffeine cannot mask, the kind scrolling cannot numb. It is the despair of a song never sung by the throat meant to voice it. You deserve more than that gray half-life. The next segment will reveal how to turn the first flicker of awareness into daily practice, how to meet the shadow in dialogue instead of duel, how to let the body complete the stress cycles it began long ago. Stay with me. The drawbridge has shifted. The air smells different already. You and I step into the tight corridor where the mind turns back on itself. Here lives the paradox. You hear only what your body can survive. Every sentence that threatens to melt the shape of the self meets a steel door and dissolves. The video you closed after 2 minutes was not shallow. The book abandoned after the first chapter was not empty. The conversation that felt dull was carrying voltage your system could not yet ground. Protection overpowered curiosity, and the words slid away like rain on oiled glass. This is not laziness, nor evidence of low ambition. It is physiology obeying biology. The nervous system scans every incoming syllable the same way it scans sudden movement in the dark. Anything that hints at the death of an old belief reads as danger. Cortisol rises, muscles tighten, the gate swings shut. The mechanism is precise and loyal. It would rather keep you entrenched in a stale life than risk the agony of shedding a skin that once shielded you from extinction. The strange result is that you roam through platforms, libraries, and therapy rooms searching for the sentence that will finally unlock everything, while at the same time bracing against the impact of that very sentence. The hunt feels sincere, the resistance feels invisible, yet they pulse from the same heart. One beat says, "Find the truth." The next beat says, "Survive the truth." When the two rhythms clash, static fills the frequency, and you call it boredom or disappointment. In reality, the internal walls hum so loudly they drown out nuance. Every breakthrough you remember followed the same script. At first, the idea tasted sour, almost insulting. Something inside wanted to slam the book shut, scroll past the clip, leave the room. A voice said, "These words are not for me. They are nonsense. They are obvious. They are cruel." Yet for reasons you could not explain, you lingered just long enough. The sourness shifted into ache, the ache into recognition, and recognition into a collapse of old scaffolding. On the rubble, you built a wider floor. The moment felt miraculous, though nothing mystical occurred. Readiness simply edged one hair past resistance, and the locked gate creaked open. Loss makes this gate so heavy. Every genuine answer asks you to bury a version of yourself that once felt essential. The disciplined achiever, the caretaker, the fearless clown, the rebel who never needed anyone. Each role rose in a moment of necessity, defended you, gained applause, became identity. Evicting a beloved guardian hurts more than any insult from the outside. It feels like betrayal. The psyche grieves what it cannot keep, and grief masquerades as stubborn deafness until it receives a funeral. Movement begins only after the funeral. That is the brutal kindness of the process. No lecture, no list of steps, no charismatic teacher can spare you the mourning. They can stand nearby with light and testimony, yet the burial is yours alone. Until then, the mind keeps recycling questions it secretly hopes will never be answered, because answers bury the questioner. You may sense that another burial waits just ahead. I will not soften that awareness. I will tell you that the pain of releasing an outdated self lasts far less than the dull ache of clinging to it. In the next segment, we will walk up to that threshold and place a hand on the latch. The air will thin, the heart may pound, yet beyond that door lives the one thing the fortress could never supply: real ground beneath your feet. Stay close. The hinge already knows what comes next, and it has begun to loosen. First comes the simplest admission, the one most minds sprint past. You are not deaf because you lack intelligence. You are deaf because you are defended. This sentence lifts a quiet weight. It transforms a shameful flaw into an understandable strategy. When the psyche builds barricades, it does so to keep you breathing. The gate is a monument to survival, not a monument to stupidity. Let that sink in until the breath deepens. Defenses deserve respect before they can soften. Now the second movement. An opinion slices close to bone. A partner speaks a hard observation. A mentor points out a blind spot. Instantly the pulse flares. The inner prosecutor gathers objections. The tongue readies a counterstrike. In this instant, whisper two words inside the skull: stop, breathe. Then add a third line: this hurts, and just maybe a seed of truth hides in the hurt. You neither swallow the comment whole nor spit it out. You place it on the inner table and simply watch. This alone shifts the nervous system from combat to cautious curiosity. The practice of pause is next. Silence feels awkward because habits crave motion, yet silence is the solvent that separates insight from insult. Instead of leaping into justification, let the air thicken. Count a slow inhale, hold, exhale, count another. The comment hovers like sediment in water. Given time, particles settle, clarity rises. Do not force belief, do not force rejection. Let the mind swirl, then clear. This is not passivity, it is strategic stillness. Into that stillness strolls the shadow. Whatever trait sparks rage or shame announces a disowned piece of self. When fury ignites at the suggestion of selfishness, selfishness likely roams in exile inside. When shame burns at the hint of weakness, fragility likely waits unwelcomed. The intense surge is a flare over buried treasure. Instead of launching outward, turn the beam inward. Say quietly, "There you are." Bring ink and paper. Name the defensive story. Name the hidden part. Name the cost of keeping them apart. The act of naming calls the shadow to the negotiating table. While the intellect maps the terrain, the body writes its own diary. Notice shoulders climbing toward ears, jaw tightening, chest locking. These are footnotes the flesh scribbles when words cut close. The body cannot lie. It carries the unfiltered report. Meet that report with breath. Inhale through the nose. Feel ribs expand. Hold a heartbeat, maybe two. Exhale longer than the inhale. Repeat until heat cools to warmth. The chemistry of panic dilutes in the bloodstream, giving space for discernment to re-enter. This somatic pause rewires circuits over time, teaching the amygdala that truth is survivable. Set a small ritual. Once each day, invite one fragment of uncomfortable feedback back into memory. Sit, breathe, replay the words exactly as spoken. Watch the first wave of defense, crest, and break. Notice which sentence of your inner critic arrives first. Write that sentence down. It might read, "They do not understand," or "I am hopeless," or "Who are they to judge me?" Writing crystallizes fog, making it visible and therefore workable. Close the ritual with gratitude to the wall itself. Say inside, "You kept me safe when safety was scarce." Gratitude melts rigidity faster than shame ever could. No war against defenses, only dialogue. Over weeks, the wall shifts from absolute stone to articulate boundary. It still stands, yet it now contains doors that open from within. One day, a comment that would have triggered days of silent resentment lands, and the breath stays steady. The ears stay open past the first sting. In that moment, you witness the birth of a new skill, the skill of hearing without collapsing. It is subtle, almost unremarkable, yet it marks a tectonic change. Choices multiply, reactions shrink, relationships feel less like minefields and more like laboratories. Remember, progress moves in spirals, not straight ascents. Some mornings defenses will slam shut faster than thought. When that happens, return to the first admission. You are not broken, you are protected. Thank the protector, breathe, and begin listening again. This cycle is not penance, it is practice. Each repetition thickens the neural path from alarm to curiosity. The day will come when the hardest truth can knock, and you will open the door yourself. Breath calm, eyes clear, ready for whatever breaks and whatever grows. First comes the simplest admission, the one most minds sprint past. You are not deaf because you lack intelligence, you are deaf because you are defended. This sentence lifts a quiet weight. It transforms a shameful flaw into an understandable strategy. When the psyche builds barricades, it does so to keep you breathing. The gate is a monument to survival, not a monument to stupidity. Let that sink in until the breath deepens. Defenses deserve respect before they can soften. Now the second movement. An opinion slices close to bone. A partner speaks a hard observation. A mentor points out a blind spot. Instantly, the pulse flares. The inner prosecutor gathers objections. The tongue readies a counterstrike. In this instant, whisper 2 words inside the skull. Stop, breathe. Then add a 3rd line. This hurts, and just maybe a seed of truth hides in the hurt. You neither swallow the comment whole nor spit it out. You place it on the inner table and simply watch. This alone shifts the nervous system from combat to cautious curiosity. The practice of pause is next. Silence feels awkward because habits crave motion, yet silence is the solvent that separates insight from insult. Instead of leaping into justification, let the air thicken. Count a slow inhale, hold, exhale, count another. The comment hovers like sediment in water. Given time, particles settle, clarity rises. Do not force belief, do not force rejection. Let the mind swirl, then clear. This is not passivity, it is strategic stillness. Into that stillness strolls the shadow. Whatever trait sparks rage or shame announces a disowned piece of self. When fury ignites at the suggestion of selfishness, selfishness likely roams in exile inside. When shame burns at the hint of weakness, fragility likely waits unwelcomed. The intense surge is a flare over buried treasure. Instead of launching outward, turn the beam inward. Say quietly, there you are. Bring ink and paper. Name the defensive story. Name the hidden part. Name the cost of keeping them apart. The act of naming calls the shadow to the negotiating table. While the intellect maps the terrain, the body writes its own diary. Notice shoulders climbing toward ears, jaw tightening, chest locking. These are footnotes. The flesh scribbles when words cut close. The body cannot lie. It carries the unfiltered report. Meet that report with breath. Inhale through the nose. Feel ribs expand. Hold a heartbeat, maybe 2. Exhale longer than the inhale. Repeat until heat cools to warmth. The chemistry of panic dilutes in the bloodstream, giving space for discernment to re-enter. This somatic pause rewires circuits over time, teaching the amygdala that truth is survivable. Set a small ritual. Once each day, invite 1 fragment of uncomfortable feedback back into memory. Sit, breathe, replay the words exactly as spoken. Watch the first wave of defense crest and break. Notice which sentence of your inner critic arrives first. Write that sentence down. It might read, "They do not understand," or "I am hopeless," or "Who are they to judge me?" Writing crystallizes fog, making it visible and therefore workable. Close the ritual with gratitude to the wall itself. Say inside, "You kept me safe when safety was scarce." Gratitude melts rigidity faster than shame ever could. No war against defenses, only dialogue. Over weeks, the wall shifts from absolute stone to articulate boundary. It still stands, yet it now contains doors that open from within. One day, a comment that would have triggered days of silent resentment lands, and the breath stays steady. The ears stay open past the first sting. In that moment, you witness the birth of a new skill, the skill of hearing without collapsing. It is subtle, almost unremarkable, yet it marks a tectonic change. Choices multiply, reactions shrink, relationships feel less like minefields and more like laboratories. Remember, progress moves in spirals, not straight ascents. Some mornings, defenses will slam shut faster than thought. When that happens, return to the first admission. You are not broken, you are protected. Thank the protector, breathe, and begin listening again. This cycle is not penance, it is practice. Each repetition thickens the neural path from alarm to curiosity. The day will come when the hardest truth can knock, and you will open the door yourself, breath calm, eyes clear, ready for whatever breaks and whatever grows. Here is the hardest slice of straight truth, the one most stories tiptoe around. The sharpest wound is not the sting of an honest word. The sharpest wound is the slow bleed of living a life that never belonged to you. Every dawn you hand over fresh hours to a script someone else drafted in ink made of expectation and fear. You clock in, smile on cue, swallow opinions, mimic beliefs that once felt safe, and the cost is invisible at first. It leaks in sighs you cannot explain, in weekends that feel like blink-long intermissions, in a bone-deep weariness no vacation can rinse away. The mind keeps a ledger even when the eyes refuse to look. It tallies unspoken dreams, unsung words, untaken turns. Each tally line is a unit of vitality siphoned to maintain the mask. Year by year, the mask grows heavier until shoulders slump without realizing why. This drain rarely roars. It hums, steady and polite, the way fluorescent lights hum above empty offices long after midnight. Many souls exit the world having never heard a single uncompromised sentence addressed to their core. They pass on well-groomed and undernourished, praised for stability, mourned for reliability, yet starved of their own untamed voice. Truth did not kill them. Absence of truth slowly dimmed the fuse. Let this land without soft padding. Every moment you postpone hearing what cuts deepest, you invest in a future that will not feel like yours. The interest compounds in fatigue, resentment, and a subtle jealousy toward anyone reckless enough to break their own chains. The pain of an honest word is a lightning bolt, searing, blinding, over in a breath. The pain of false living is erosion, silent, ceaseless, turning granite into dust. You stand at the hinge between those two pains. One slices, one leaches, one ends with scar tissue that supports new muscle, the other ends with dust no wind remembers. The walls have ears, the mask feels the heat, the ledger waits for your signature. Breathe once more and choose which cost you carry forward, because silence will choose for you if you keep still. You are not required to tear down a lifetime of armor before sunrise. Tonight, you need only one shift. Let the next hard truth reach you a heartbeat deeper than the last one did. Hearing is not a single heroic leap. It is a pulse, a slow widening of the inner gate. Each time you allow a word to land, the current of your own life grows stronger. Nothing outside grants that power. Only what is truly heard can be truly used, and that is the first taste of freedom. So pause with me here. Feel the quiet that follows a difficult insight. Notice how the body both trembles and relaxes, how fear and relief mingle in the same breath. That mixture is the signal you have stepped beyond routine into living terrain. Stay there. Let the nervous system learn it can survive exposure to raw reality without shutting down. This is the practice that stitches new possibility to every ordinary day. Если вы признаете себя в этих строках, напиши в комментариях. Я больше не бегу от боли. Посмотрим, сколько здесь готовых к правде. Your words will not vanish into a void. They will mark a gathering place for those who refuse to keep bleeding quietly behind perfect masks. Read the other names. Feel the pulse of a community that chooses honesty over habit. Remember, you do not have to fix everything at once. You only have to keep listening, even when the sound is rough and the meaning is heavy. The wall begins to crumble from the inside out, stone by stone, until daylight seeps through the cracks.